I have been a big fan of Overwatch since I first started playing it back in 2017. Back then, the game was celebrating its 1-year anniversary, and I had heard a lot of good things about it. It was a free-to-play weekend, so sure, I'll give it a try. And give it a try, I did, and I had a great time with it, a better time than I was expecting. And Overwatch rocketed to becoming one of my favorite games of all time. I simply love the character design, the gameplay is just good, mindless fun, and the series had so much potential to grow. There were new heroes being released constantly, and the future seemed bright. And over the years, that seemed to wind down a bit, the hype died off. Development on the game started to stagnate. They said they were working on Overwatch 2, going to be a new sequel for this game. So, I was getting excited for it. I thought Overwatch 2 could be great. Of course, these days we all know how that story went. Overwatch 2 was released, and it was a massive disappointment. A lot of the promises that the team made, predominantly a story campaign mode, were completely absent, and they strung us along for a bit before telling us, yeah, we didn't actually do the thing we said we were gonna do. But please, keep buying our overpriced in-game skins, buy all these different in-game currencies, be part of the ecosystem. But public sentiment on the game went decidedly sour, and not without cause. Overwatch 2 kinda sucks. You really can't come back from a debacle like that. You can't lie to the community and expect to still maintain that high level of goodwill. And even though I did continue with Overwatch 2 for a while, I did fall off, and I don't play it to this day anymore. But in the months leading up to Overwatch 2's release, I was still hopeful, and I was making predictions about what we could expect. In fact, I made an entire video called 20 Predictions About Overwatch 2. And then I just never really released it. I didn't think many people would be interested. I didn't think the community would care all that much. But today I'm going to take a look back and see how many of my predictions actually came true. And together we can take a laugh at the things I got wrong and the things I got horribly wrong. And maybe even a few things I accurately predicted. Orisa will get some new mobility ability or some kind of new mobility functionality. She'll be able to move faster and reposition more rapidly. She will be able to evade incoming enemies. Right now, she needs a second tank. In Overwatch 2, there's not going to be second tank. There's only going to be one tank on each side. So she needs to have more survivability. And in this case, I believe it's going to be more mobility. So I would say this prediction actually did come true. Orisa was completely reworked, and one of the abilities she has not only allows her to move faster, but also to absorb incoming projectiles. So yes, increased movement and increased evasion, check that off the list, she definitely has that. In addition, her Fortify ability used to slow her down, but they keep on reducing the speed reduction penalty so she can maintain her speed even when she's fortified, so even more mobility. And my second prediction revolves around Orisa as well. I think they're going to give Orisa a new ultimate. If they're going to be reworking her character, might as well give a pass on her ultimate. It's more of a support kind of ability. Everyone huddle around this bongo on the ground, get your damage amplified by the bongo on the ground. It encourages a bunker playstyle, and it's gotta go. We are now 2 for 2 because Orisa did indeed get a new ultimate. Her character was completely reworked, and even though she does still have the gun on her arm, that is basically the only thing they kept. The Orisa from Overwatch 2 is a character that plays completely different, and the bongo ultimate she had was replaced with a ultimate ability that revolves around using her javelin. I think they actually will get rid of his barrier. I think that's going to be my third prediction. Sigma loses his barrier. He might still have his kinetic grasp, but since Overwatch 2 is less about protecting your entire team with a barrier, I think the kinetic grasp will be good enough for him. He only needs to protect himself. It's less important for him to protect his team. Well, that prediction did not come true. In fact, Sigma has received the least amount of changes of all the tanks. In fact, while a lot of the original tanks had to have their designs updated to compensate for being the only tank on a team, Sigma could already do a lot, so he really didn't need to be changed all that much. So no, past me, Sigma did not lose his barrier at all. I think at this point I was still reeling from the Overwatch 1 double shield meta. I thought Orisa and Sigma, their combined shields were way too oppressive, and that I thought the shields in general had to go. But as it turns out, when you've only got one tank on a team, you can't have double shields, so Sigma having a barrier isn't that big of a deal.
Sigma is going to gain the ability to fly in Overwatch 2, and I'm not as confident about that prediction, but sure, we'll go with it. They'll find some way to give him more mobility, and they might just settle on flying, because flying's kind of fun, and they could probably find a way to balance it.
Well, that is completely incorrect. Sigma does not have the ability to fly. In retrospect, it's kind of silly that I made that prediction.
Bastion is a damage character who is very peculiar, in that he is perhaps the only damage character who makes himself immobile with a giant weak spot on his back, and basically needs the help of shields to not be completely destroyed. I think they're going to take his sentry form, which is an iconic part of the character, and they're going to rework that to be his ultimate ability. They might give him back his shield, as was shown when he was first revealed so many years ago. They might make him more lethal as well, if that's even possible.
Well, I was partially correct. Bastion's sentry form did not stick around as it is. But even though he did get a pretty big rework, his sentry form did not become his ultimate. Instead, they just gave him treads so that he can move around while in his sentry form. And I want to give myself partial credit because I did accurately predict that his ultimate would be changed. However, sentry form did not become his ultimate. He had a different ultimate where he became some kind of howitzer cannon. So I'm going to have to count this one as not a successful prediction.
And if you're taking the sentry form away from his regular gameplay abilities, you gotta replace it with something. So my other prediction for Bastion is that he's going to get a new ability that allows him to have more mobility. He's one of the only damage characters with basically no mobility whatsoever in the mid-game.
There we go, that's a successful prediction. As I mentioned, he did get treads and now can move around while in sentry form, so he does have more mobility.
I think they're going to try and keep his old tank ultimate and make that his new regular ability.
Oh, well, never mind, I take it back. The prediction wasn't good at all. Bastion's tank form was removed entirely, so no, I don't think I actually can count this as a successful prediction because Bastion's tank form does not exist anymore. So take it back, that was a failed prediction as well.
They're going to try and take away McCree's stun. They're going to take away McCree's stun. And that sounds ridiculous with the game we know now, because if you take away McCree's stun ability, then other highly mobile characters will have way more mobility, and they'll be a menace to deal with. But I think the entire game is being rebalanced in a way that McCree will not have need of his stun. They'll give him a different ability, and they'll take away his stun.
This wasn't a crazy prediction, given that we had already seen that some of the characters had lost their ability to stun other players, but it's still a bit surprising that McCree, or Cassidy as he's now known, lost his ability to throw out a stun grenade. It was such a core component of his kit, but they did ultimately remove its ability to stun and replaced the stun grenade with a magnetic grenade. And everyone hated it, so they replaced the magnetic grenade with a flashbang, which doesn't stun enemies, it hinders them. Hindering is a new mechanic that they introduced because they didn't want characters to stun, so now sometimes they hinder. It's ridiculous.
But even if they don't get rid of his flash grenade, I think they are going to find a way to give McCree more mobility, because he is one of the only characters with very little mobility. He can roll, and that's it. He just has a roll ability, and it's kind of pathetic in terms of mobility. So I think they'll give McCree some other way of getting around. They'll give him some mobility ability.
He is a little bit more mobile. He can now use his roll while in the air, and when he's using his ultimate, he can move around a bit faster, a bit freer. He's no longer quite the sitting duck.
I don't know how. I don't know what that would look like. He might have the ability to summon a horse because he's cowboy themed. I don't know.
Okay, I take it back. I'm not gonna give myself that one. For speculating that he might acquire a horse ability, I'm retracting my own point.
And if the developers only want tanks to be able to stun, then will they be getting rid of Brigitte's shield bash ability? Almost certainly, yes. If they're talking about getting rid of McCree's stun ability, which very few people complain about, they're almost certainly looking to get rid of Brigitte's shield bash stun ability.
This prediction was accurate. They did indeed take away Brigitte's ability to stun. And then they gave it back, but only partially. Her shield stuns, but only when she's using her ultimate. And also the shield becomes really big. And the character is just kind of a mess. Still fun to play, but really kind of messy.
Moira is very boring, and the skill ceiling for her is very low. Once you've figured out her abilities, you can't really min-max them. People have been able to do some kind of skillful trick jumps with her Fate ability, but other than that, 90% of your time, you're just spraying piss over your teammates, and that's all the gameplay you get out of her. So my prediction for Moira is that they will give her a new ability in some form. I don't know, maybe they'll rework her damage orb and healing orb in some way. I don't know what they're going to do to Moira, but I know they're going to give her some kind of utility, something that requires some kind of skill.
Well, I was pretty confident in that prediction, wasn't I? I know they're going to make these changes. As it turns out, Moira has received basically no changes. Damage numbers and healing numbers have been tweaked a bit, but Moira is basically the exact same character as she was in Overwatch 1. So, nope, wrong.
I don't think Doomfist will be moved to the tank or brawler role. Doomfist will probably stay in the damage category, and I'll tell you why. For simplicity's sake, let's just say that the Talon organization is evil, and he is the head of that organization, and he needs to be threatening and intimidating, and that's not what the brawler role really does. The brawler role is more about defense and protection. And secondly, in the developer livestream, we've already seen him in action. They've already showcased his abilities, having new sound design and new visuals. So they're already putting effort into making the character work in Overwatch 2 as he is.
Wow, these hits just keep on coming, don't they? No, Doomfist was moved into the tank role, the role that was not renamed Brawler. It is still tank, and Doomfist is now one of them. He has all his crowd control abilities, but they did remove his ability to one-shot most people. This prediction was yet another failure.
Symmetra will get at least one major change, and why do I think that? I just have a hunch. I just feel like the initial design for the character has strayed a bit from... She was originally a support character, alright? She was placed in the same category as other healers, but she couldn't heal. And then they took away her shield ability, and they reworked her abilities over and over again to make her fit in the damage category, but she has an ultimate that doesn't kill enemies, unlike the majority of damage characters, and her turrets are kind of annoying. She's kind of all over the place. If there's any character in this game held together with glue and duct tape, it's Symmetra.
As it turns out, the developers have largely left Symmetra alone. Maybe it's because they think she's balanced, or maybe it's because they just keep forgetting she exists. But in Overwatch 1, it just felt like Symmetra kept getting reworked and tweaked and touched up over and over and over, and I expected that to continue into Overwatch 2. But it seems like a different character seems to have gotten that treatment. Sombra. Sombra has been changed over and over and over and over. Every time I get the inkling to boot up Overwatch 2 and I draw Sombra and play around with Sombra a little bit, I have to relearn how that character works because now her invincibility only lasts 10 seconds. Now it only lasts after you throw her translocator. Now her translocator doesn't actually stay in one spot. It activates as soon as you throw it. Now she does bonus damage if she's attacking the enemy from behind. No, wait, we've taken that back. It is an absolute chaotic mess, and it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad what Sombra's become. And if I had made my prediction about Sombra, it would have been accurate. But no, I made it about Symmetra, so this prediction is not accurate.
So for my next prediction, I will say that we are going to get a new damage character with some kind of poison grenade ability. The reason I'm making this prediction is because during the PvE experience, the campaign experience, they showcased a couple of items you could pick up and use. They showcased a turret, much like Torbjorn's turret. They showcased a healing field, like Soldier's Biotic Field. They showcased a shield ability, much like Winston's shield ability, or Reinhardt's, I guess you could call it. And they also showcased a poison grenade. Now, no character currently has a poison grenade. The closest we have is Anna, who could throw out the anti-healing grenade, but no poison grenade. And I think there's going to be a character that can throw poison grenades.
To this day, no, Overwatch does not have a poison-themed character or even a poison status effect. It doesn't exist. Maybe it'll exist in the future, but 2 years later, and no such character or ability exists in the game, this prediction failed.
I don't think we're going to get very many new tanks. I'm going to say we get one new tank at most. We might get 0, but I think we're probably just going to get 1. 2 is stretching it. I'm going to make my prediction, though, at 1. 1 new tank at most.
That was accurate. We only got 1 new tank. We had Junker Queen, and that was it. In terms of new characters, we had 3, 1 for each role, so 1 healer, 1 damage character, and 1 tank.
And I will make a prediction right now that at least one of the new healers will be an evil healer. And I make this prediction with the campaign in mind, because when you're playing through campaign missions, story missions, you've got Doomfist, you got Widowmaker, you got Sombra, you got Reaper, you've got so many choices to pick from, but in terms of healing, you just have Moira. You just got one healer, Moira, which means that for every campaign mission, Moira has to be there, unless you come up with a second Talon-themed healer, or an evil healer or something.
Or they could just cancel the co-op experience entirely, and then it's not a problem, the bastards! Healers that have been added in Overwatch 2, Kiriko, Lifeweaver, Illari, and Juno. None of them are dedicated evil characters.
For my final character prediction, I'd like to talk about Widowmaker herself. They've already shown off her redesign, and I don't think they're going to remake this character, which is unfortunate because she has the worst ultimate in the game. She has wall hacking, and unlike so many other damage characters who can get some pretty crazy kills with their abilities, Widowmaker has wall hacks, and the wall hacks can't actually kill anybody. They'll definitely help her out and help out the team, figure out where the enemies are coming from, and enable her to get better headshots, but the ultimate itself does not kill anybody, which is kind of rare among damage characters. So I think they probably should change some things about Widowmaker, but I don't think they will, especially because she's very flashy.
Yes, this prediction is accurate. Widowmaker has largely not been touched. They did tinker around with taking away her ability to one-shot characters, but no, they didn't put poison into her bullets, they didn't give her a new ultimate. It's still the lame wall hacking she's had since release.
In the professional scene, she can get a lot done, and she really draws a lot of attention. So I don't think they're going to make a whole lot of changes to her, simply because she pulls a lot of attention.
Oh yes, competitive Overwatch. Silly me, thinking that would still be a thing in the coming years. Yes, they have put so much money into the Overwatch League. I'm sure that was a successful business venture that won't collapse in on itself once the money runs out.
They've already said that they're getting rid of 2 CP maps, the assault mode, as they officially called it. But they already have the assets for these maps. They've created all these buildings and models for Paris and Japan and the Temple of Anubis. They're not just going to get rid of these models. They're not going to throw these assets in the bin. I think we'll see Temple of Anubis return in perhaps a hybrid form or a payload form. I think we're going to see Japan again, and we're going to see all those pagodas and those Shinto shrines, but it's not going to be a 2 CP map. They're going to have to rework it, but they're going to rework it because they've already got the assets. So that's my prediction.
This prediction was indeed accurate to an extent. The maps themselves weren't quite reworked, but the assets were reused. Temple of Anubis is still not in the game, but they recobbled the assets together and released a map called Throne of Anubis for the new Clash game mode. Same thing for Japan. We now have Hanaoka as a new map, reusing assets from Hanamura. The reality of it is kind of sad because these maps were so beautiful, these 2CP maps, but people just didn't like the 2CP gameplay style. It wasn't a fun game mode. So they took these assets and made new maps for their new mode, Clash. And I hate Clash. I think a lot of people don't like Clash. It's not a very fun game mode. So now these assets have been used for 2 different modes that people do not like. And I'm sure I'll get some pushback on that because there are some people that like to defend these modes. But man, they are not fun. Give me a payload map or a hybrid map any day of the week. Clash sucks. But this prediction did not suck. It was accurate.
And that folds nicely into another prediction I'd like to make, that all of the maps will be changed in some significant way. All of them. No map will stay as it is. They will rework every single map.
Now, I'm not sure how accurate this prediction has been because Overwatch 2 has about 24 maps, but I have seen that a lot of maps have been tweaked little bits here and there. Some of the cars or cover have been moved around. Junkertown Point 1, for example, had a lot of open area. It was a sniper's paradise, so they reworked some of the cover, added a water tower over here, blocked some sight lines. Same thing for Havana Point 3. The snipers had too much playroom there, so they blocked some of the sight lines. Dorado, they added more cover here. And again, I'm not sure every map was changed, but I feel like the vast majority of them have been, so I would say this is an accurate prediction.
And if they're gonna rework every map, then my next prediction will be that every map, at least on payload and hybrid maps, will have 3 spawn points for the defenders. As it currently stands, some maps have 3 spawn points for the defenders, but some of them do not, like King's Row. And if you're running back from spawn, it can take a lot of time.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure why I made that prediction. Maybe it was because I had been playing a lot of characters that didn't have a lot of mobility, and I got tired of walking back to point over and over. Maybe I thought the developers would put a bit more effort into making sure that trek back wasn't quite so tedious, and maybe that's what the mobility creep did. Maybe instead of adding a 3rd defender's spawn point, they just gave every character more mobility. So, no, this prediction was wrong.
And speaking of spawning, I've got one more prediction to make. On some maps, you spawn, and your best course of action is to immediately jump off the cliff and kill yourself. And that is ridiculous. But it happens all the time, especially at Overwatch League, the professional level. It's just smarter play to take a sharp 90-degree right and walk off the cliff and die.
I am delighted to report that this prediction was accurate. Suicide spawns are much less frequent. A lot of the most problematic areas got reworked, including Watch Point Gibraltar, where that 2nd point defender spawn was really just a death sentence. It was so silly watching Professional League Overwatch play and watching the characters just constantly jumping off the map so they could regroup at the 3rd defender spawn instead. Watch Point Gibraltar indeed received many changes. As much fun as that map was, it had some design problems, and it has been touched up since then and improved. And if you play it today, it's a lot of fun. It's in the best state it's ever been.
And I'm not going to make any predictions about the story because, honestly, it's been 5 years, and we've been drip-fed a story, so they could really go any direction they want with it. There's been very few constraints in that regard.
Yes, they could go in any direction with the story. They could pick any direction and make progress. Or they could not do anything, and the story can remain completely stagnant as it has for a decade. Overwatch 2, you fucking disappointment, you piece of crap game. Some of the design choices have been improvements, but at this point, the game is largely dead to me, and my biggest hope is that in a few years, Overwatch 3 is released, and they really invest time into it, but I'm not feeling hopeful. Activision Blizzard sucks as a company and was bought by Microsoft, which sucks as a company. And Overwatch is probably never going to reach the high highs it enjoyed back in the 2016 era. Goodbye, Overwatch. Thanks for all the fun. Sorry the life got sucked out of you. But hey, it just means that my addiction has been broken, and I can enjoy other games besides you. So thank you all for joining me as I've taken a look back and reviewed my predictions and seen that the majority of them did not come true, but in the end, it's okay, because nobody cares.